All right, folks, here it is, sweet and simple. You got Jack Dennis, one of the best fly designers, Amy's aunt. We're gonna whip it up for you here at Spawn. Hope you love it. If you do, hit like and subscribe. All right, so in the vise for this lovely Amy's aunt variation, I guess, we've got an Ahrex NS122, and this is the size 8. And the reason I'm using this hook is one of the pitfalls of tying such a big foam fly on a normal traditional style dry fly hook. You're gonna have a small hook gap here. And so if you notice, like a lot of Amy's ants are tied on a curved hook. I'm going with this just because of the size of the hook gap. I know how well these flies are gonna float, and I'm not intimidated by using a small streamer hook for this fly. For the thread, we're using some 6/0 olive uni. And let's get a little bit of thread. I'm going to start all the way behind the hook and work my way down after I trim this tag end off to exactly where I'm going to start placing some foam and the first set of rubber legs. So for this hook, you can see it's not quite to the barb. It's just past the hook point, but before the barb, that flat portion is going to stop, and that's where I'm going to stop. I'm going to take 2 thread wraps forward, and if you've tied a lot of foam flies, you know the frustrating part can be that foam wants to slip over as you're wrapping your thread, and then you have to pull down extra hard, and you sometimes will tear the foam. So I'm going to show you a neat little application here, and this is, if you've watched Charlie Craven tie, this is a trick he uses quite a bit. And so off of a piece of foam, I have trimmed the edge, and I do mean just the edge. And that's gonna make all the difference here. So very small amount of some super glue gel right on top. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm trying to imagine where the thorax is gonna be here. And I don't want this all the way to the hook eye. I just want it to where I think the thorax will start and the abdomen ends. And then I'm going to keep this foam only on the top of the hook shank. Make some diagonal loose wraps here just to get it positioned. Once I have that, I'm coming at the other 45 degree and break that off right there. And so before I tie this all the way down, this is what you're looking at. And now I can go ahead and just one more wrap up and one more wrap down. And I have created the perfect surface now so that when I pull down on my thread, it goes through the foam, and this is going to act as a little cushion. And that's all you need to support that foam and keep it on top and keep your flies floating all day. All right, 2 pieces of foam, light olive and gold, 2 millimeter. And what we're gonna do is these get stacked on top of each other before tied down. So to emulate what the butt section of a terrestrial, especially a grasshopper, is gonna look like, this will be our underpiece of foam. And so if you've ever seen a crayon, we're just gonna kind of emulate the crayon tip. So there's a cut, match it on the other side. Voila, you've got the bottom portion. Now this is our top piece of foam, and this will sit over that yellow. So what we wanna do, just to make this look as realistic, is we're gonna go the opposite now, and we're gonna cut a V into our top piece of foam. Now you'll see why here in a second. Like so, and voila. So now you'll get the visual of what you see from on top is a little bit of that bottom piece showing through, and what the fish will see is what looks natural, because the wings on a grasshopper, when they're folded back, sit just on the outer edges like that of the butt. And enough of that. Where I'm going to place these is where our cut edge is on that crayon tip is going to line up with the back of the hook, right where it curves like so. And then look underneath and make sure you have that foam lined up on the center of your hook shank. Once you do, this is a key moment here. Pin that down, push down on top with your offhand. Keeping your thread as straight as you can, we're going to go over. And once it's here, we're going to start slowly adding pressure all the way around as we make that first wrap. Second, make sure you're pulling here. We're going to pull toward ourselves. Once you get to here, push that thread away from you. Keep coming. And this takes 4 or 5 thread wraps. And if you were just to go in there and really hammer it down, you risk ripping this foam. And after you've tied a couple of these, you're going to realize every step is crucial for time. And this is not a fast fly to tie. So you're going to want to take your time, make sure you're not exerting pressure at the wrong places at the wrong time. All right. For the legs, we've got some Grizzly barred rubber legs. These are size medium, fluorescent yellow Chartreuse. And, you know, leg choice is of course up to you. What we want is something that's going to assist on the sides and support that from not falling one way or the other, just in case something happens to, you know, the tying process. All right, so I'm going to tie one in on my side, and we're not going to trim these yet. We'll trim it when the whole fly is finished. So I'm going to give one wrap there, and I'm just using where the 2 pieces of foam meet as my guide on where these will sit. You'll be able to see this a little bit easier. I'll leave it tilted for you. And do the same thing on this side. Oh, doesn't want to grab that way. We'll grab it this way. One wrap, move this right in between where the pieces of foam meet right there. Just a rough estimate. They're pretty close in length, so I'm going to shimmy it there. Like so. And I'm going to come through again. Now, as you're making these thread wraps, this is going through the leg and into that foam again. So you want to just kind of shimmy that thread a little bit and make sure it's digging all the way to the base. Otherwise, if you trap this leg, it might bend funny. It might not go the way you want. All right, this is all we need for this section, but we can't sit here and tie the rest of this fly with all this stuff in the way. So this is our trick here. We're going to pull the legs back, all 4 of them, and that top piece of foam we're going to pull back. And I know it's going to look funny to crimp all this down, but now I've got that. What you can't see is this rubber band I've got around my vise, and I'm going to just hold the clothespin like so. Now I'll lift this yellow foam, or bottom piece of foam, and this gets just a little touch of glue, once again, very little. And this sets up really quickly. Keep that as straight as possible, centered, and now our angled wrap. So at a 45-degree angle, we're gonna start getting this turned on to the hook shank and really meld it on there. And one of the biggest things you don't wanna do is clog that little hook eye, right? So when you're getting close, this is it. And at this point, I'm going to start going back to the hook bend with opposite angle 45-degree wraps here. And this is what you're gonna see on the top. All right, so now if you look underneath, the foam is meeting right in the middle, and we wanna keep this. So we're gonna do this again. Now where these little bubbles of foam are, we're gonna sit our thread right on each of that. So you're just going in the spaces, if you will, of what you just made. And you'll see I'm putting my finger over there every time I pull down on that thread to prevent this from slipping over. And right up to the hook eye one more time. And now we're going to just decrease that angle slightly. We're no longer at 45 or about a 30 or maybe even 25 until we get all the way back, and make sure you do go all the way back to where that top piece of foam is. And now, one more time, just some regular wraps. I'm gonna go up to roughly where I want my thorax to begin and the abdomen to stop. And it's not exactly half, it's about 1/3 for that thorax and not quite 2/3 for the abdomen. What we don't wanna do is overcrowd up here. You wanna leave plenty of space for that head, because this will come back after we've got the thorax done. All right, so now, the extra thread wraps that I have in the abdomen section are just going to keep me, it gives me a little guide as far as how far do I need to go with all this stuff. All right, from whiting, a little saddle hackle. And I mean, this one's small, so you can see I'm not using this to float the entire fly. We've got a bunch of foam on there that's going to float the fly. So as we're wrapping, it's just going to be slightly undersized because, again, we're using a streamer hook here. We're not tying this on a traditional dry fly hook. I'm going to trim the bottom portion so I can tie this in. And you can tie without the hackle, and the only difference then is that the body is going to sit in the surface of the water a little bit. Nice easy wraps here, not a lot of tension. It's all about positioning at this point. That's good. I'm going to come up again to where I left that mark of where I would like my abdomen to stop and the thorax to begin. Now for the body. Typically this fly calls for chenille, a sparkly olive chenille. For those that have fished this pattern quite a bit, you know a red chenille body is just about as dirty as it gets, and the fish can't help but eat it. But for this one, I'm going to dub a body, so we're going to use some Spawn Simi Seal, and this is the UV slow burn flame. And I want a pretty tight noodle. I'm just going to start dubbing some of this onto the thread here. And the reason I want a really tight noodle is there aren't a lot of loose breathing filaments or anything like that on a terrestrial, especially on a grasshopper. If you look at the underbody, it's very segmented, but it's very smooth. And every little bit of, you know, those subtle nuances that you can emulate into your flies should help. So let's see what we can do here. All right, just gonna start wrapping back toward our hook band. Try not to hit the camera here. And you wanna work this little dubbing noodle all the way back so that when you look at the underbody of this fly, you don't see where the leg tie-in or the separation of the foam is or any of that. So keep that in mind as far as how far back you want to go. Tighten this last little bit up, and looks like we're going to have just the right amount for our abdomen. Don't advance your thread at this point. Leave it right where you finished that last bit of dubbing. And now we're going to take this hackle feather, and we're going to start wrapping this through. And you can go ahead and space it if you'd like evenly so that it looks like a segmented body, because the quill will give that effect. But you know, if you're just looking at floatability, go ahead and add a couple extra wraps of hackle in there and wiggle that in so that you're getting it through the dubbing and seating that feather at its core as far into that as you can. Come up on top, and that's the last wrap. Thread over to catch the feather, thread over to catch the feather, and now we'll go a couple wraps in front and come right back to our original spot. At this point, we'll trim out the tag end. Now these fibers on top are not going to do anything except for impede how the foam sits. And so, what do? We eliminate them. They're not of any use to us on top there. Now we can undo the clothespin, and don't freak out if you leave a mark on the foam. As you can see, this foam is going to sit well up here. Chances are we won't need much, if any, of that. So don't worry about it. And you'll see as we make this move, this is going to free up some of the pressure and actually bring the legs forward a little and separate for us. So right over the top, remember our thread hasn't moved from where we finished that abdomen. And again, try to keep these thread wraps as straight as you can over the top. And once you're there, fingers from the offhand to hold it where it needs to be, and then pull down. Position, fingers to hold, pull down, and 3. We'll do one more good wrap there. All right. I'm just gonna see where the leg keeps moving just a touch, and you could add a little bit of head cement when you put those legs in too, but you shouldn't have to. So there we've got the top, and this is what we're looking at for the bottom. Now, all I want to do at this point is we need room for some flash in our elk hair here. So I'm going to go ahead and condense down this foam and match exactly where it's set for the yellow foam or gold foam underneath that. And again, those angled wraps to get started, and then you can put some more directly vertical wraps in. All right, and that's looking pretty good right there. And that's about as condensed as we need it to be. I'll try to show you the top there so you can see it's just lining up the foam and leaving plenty of space for the head and the thorax as when we bring that foam over at the end of the fly. All right, so now that we have enough space there, let's get some bling bling out. And for this, I've got some Krystal flash. The color is rainbow. And I'm going to select 4 pieces of flash. You don't need a ton of flash, but again, it's a personal choice. We're just trying to give the illusion of sunlight coming through the elk hair wing. And so I'm going to double this over and cut it in half so that I'm working with 8 pieces. And now I'm going to double it over the thread. Bring it over and pinch in my offhand. And now I'm going to just bring it right on top and start tying it down with a few strong wraps toward the back. And that's about as difficult as it is to add some flash. Get these legs out of here so you can see what I'm doing. And now we're ready for some hair. So I've got some hair that I've pre-stacked, and this is about 1 pencil width or diameter that you're going for. And so here we've got them already stacked, evened up on the ends. And there are 2 ways that you can add this hair at this point. You can measure and find out where you want that to be, and you can trim the hair on the butts so that when you line that up, it sits right in here. But for now, I'm just going to tie it in the other way, and I'm going to show you the measurement here. So we want this hair to stick out just past the butt so that as it flares and is brought up, it's still sticking out just slightly past the end of the fly. I'm going to switch to my offhand, get a good grip here, and hold it right on top of the fly. After I've done that, I'm going to take a wrap around. I'm going to not pull down, but I'm going to get all the way around and then pull up on the thread and do it again and again. And if you see, my index finger is here to make sure none of this hair is going to come over the side of the foam. My thumb is on my side to make sure none of it comes toward me. And if you use that upward pressure for the first few wraps, you're really not going to let it slide around a lot. It's not going to expand too much, so that it doesn't look like you're spinning hair. We just want a wing of hair. All right, so I've gone all the way back to where the foam is, and now I'm gonna just make a couple wraps forward and try not to catch any more of those butts than I need to. And voila, we've got a hair wing that stays on top of the fly. And this is what the illusion is from the bottom side. We don't need to see that hair except for back here. So now, very carefully, take your time. This is why a lot of people like to pre-cut that hair on the butt side, is so that you avoid this part. Again, preference is yours. I don't mind doing it either way. But you can see this requires a little bit of tidy work once you've got it tied in. And then just grab those hairs that are going to stay part of the wing, remove them, and now you've got that cleaned out. Sorry for my OCD. I see one more. And now we got that out of the way. Give that a couple flicks. Any loose fibers will just fall right out. And continue getting all the elk hair butts tied down here. And you can see that I'm bumping the foam, I'm doing everything crazy here. The nice thing is we tied that down and solidified it so that it doesn't move side to side I'm not worried when I hit that a couple times. It's not going to do anything bad to it. All right, so now it's time to get that head or thorax here. And for that, I'm going to come all the way back to the base of the hair where we've got it tied down. And now I'm going to switch to some diamond dub. And this is blood leech. And the reason I like this is it still maintains some of those red tones that we have in the body, but it's much, much darker. And if you look at most bugs, that thorax is definitely a darker shade or a couple shades than whatever the abdomen color is. And so it creates a nice little contrast and almost a natural, not hot spot, but a contrast spot. And fish can easily key in on that no matter the weather or sunlight. All right. And again, try to get that dubbing noodle pretty tight. I'm going to slick that up there and we'll start wrapping. Now we're going to wrap from the back to the front, all the way up behind that hook eye. Make sure you get all of that behind the foam like so. And now we're back to where we started and we have a complete full head of that darker tone. Trim out any of these unruly fibers. Nothing to it. All right. And now that we've got all our hair situated, I'm going to just trim out some of the unruly fibers of the flash as well. And you don't want all these fibers to be the same length. You know, different length cuts, and then it's going to reflect light in different spots and do nothing but alert those fish, hey, there's something pretty tasty up here. All right. So now let's pull this over. And this, we're going to tie like we have all the other pieces of foam that we've tied in. Position, offhand comes in, and secure with a downward pull. Position the thread, hand on top to control that foam, don't let it slide, and pull down. A couple more wraps like so. And we are ready for some more legs. We're going to do the same exact thing in the front that we did for the rear legs. I'll tie my side on first and then I'll tie it on your side. And this time we're looking for where the foam is, where that corner where the hair and the foam meet. And that's what I like to use as a little guideline for where to set these legs. I'll get one on your side now. And again, leave these legs a little long at first because we'll come in after we've got this fly done and trim them all up. So you can see here, we're going to have those in a nice X position. I'll give a couple more thread wraps just to solidify those legs. A little snug down and we're good. So now, if you see this foam is sticking out quite a bit, I'm not going to shape the head yet. I'm just going to cut where the end would be. And you can see it's a significant head. If you look on a hopper, and most terrestrials are going to have a very defined head shape, and we'll get to that here in a second, but don't go too skimpy on that. And you do want it to be at least as large as the bump of the head, but maybe sticking out a little bit further. Now that I've got that cut though, I can go ahead and whip finish. And this is just a little tricky with the legs, but you'll see here, a little patience. So that first leg, once you've got it over, it's just a matter of not having a lot of tension on your whip finisher. If you do it like so and you don't have excess tension, you can get around all that, no problem. We'll do it one more time. Like so. All right. Now we can trim a thread out and start to finish off the aesthetics of what makes this such a cool fly. All right. So we got a little head cement, and I'm going to start here and try to avoid getting a big glob on the legs. And now that I've done that, I've left this piece of foam here that goes over the wing so I can pull that foam back and really get that head cement right on the thread wraps. It's important on this fly, especially because I don't know if I've ever seen another dry fly get eaten and abused and chewed on as much as I have the Amy's Ant. Jack Dennis really knocked it out of the park with this fly design. And this was probably one of the first flies I truly became obsessed with as a fly tyer, and was drawn to it and just had to figure out what was going on. And I was not ready to tie the fly, but I did it anyway, and I'm so glad I did. And I hope some of this leads to more of you trying to tie this fly, because it seems a little bit daunting at first, but it's truly not. It's just a matter of follow the steps, take your time, don't get crazy, don't get excited, and it'll all come out. All right, so now that we've got that glued up, I'm going to start with the head, and I'm just going to trim the corners off, and I'll show you what it looks like after I'm done. Just match it up on both sides. And now we don't have a block of foam coming out so much as we have a more pleasing head shape. And then I'm going to make that same crayon tip cut on the wing portion of the foam, match up both sides, and what you'll get is just something that looks a little bit nicer than a flat cut. And at this point, I like to grab all this elk hair and the flash and just move it up once, let it drop again, and there's a pretty good profile, a very high wing, 2 pieces of foam. I mean, you're hard pressed to get this thing to sink. All right, and at this point, as far as the measurement, you know, it's just slightly less than the body length for these legs. So since we tied them in nice and long, it's just going to trim up both sides here real quickly and get them kind of match. They don't have to be exact by any means. And because of the design of this fly, again, Jack Dennis, pretty much just genius on this fly. You're not going to have issues of these legs getting stuck on that hook point, getting tangled, anything like that. They're going to kind of keep themselves out of trouble, if you will. And there you have it. That's my take on the Amy's Ant. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please remember to hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the water.